Moving now to the last session before the break. I'd like now to invite Mr. Marinos Giannopoulos, CEO of Enterprise Greece, Mr. Elenos Karaindros, General Manager of Strategy and Mergers and Acquisitions for Mytilineos Group, and Mr. Maximos Scopelitis. He's the Brand Marketing and Communications Director of EY Greece, and I'm now replacing Mr. Costopoulos. He's suffering with COVID, so I will be moderating the session. We don't have much time, as you know, so I'd like you to be lean and agile so we can have a proper discussion. Now, Mr. Giannopoulos, what are the priorities and the tools when it comes to attracting investments, given the international developments that you take into account in Enterprise Greece? I'd like to thank you for the kind invitation, and allow me to say that Enterprise Greece is the official body for attracting investments and promoting exports of our country under the umbrella of the Foreign Ministry. It's been mentioned before by Minister Skylakakis and the advisor to the Prime Minister that Greece, according to various surveys, is one of the top investment destinations in Europe. Let me say in a nutshell that in 2021, we registered an increase of 90% in FDIs, and for the 9 months of 2022 until September, the rise was approximately 26% in this year to year. Allow me to say that this is the outcome of the pro-business approach and policy on behalf of the government, and the fact it's quite attractive to investors. We have an increase in the into the construction of hubs in Greece. Let's say we have the investments by Pfizer, Google, Microsoft, and Volkswagen as well. We have targeted actions in specific industries, for instance, tourism, real estate, energy, new technologies, agri-food, pharmaceuticals, and services. Now, what we try to do is to bring to the surface the work carried out by the government. We, the Enterprise Greece, organize roadshows, conferences, expos, national stands, B2B meetings. We do the so-called matchmaking in all strategic missions that we are invited to take part in. We do the matchmaking between the investors, the matchmaking with the investors, what they want us to offer them, and we have to offer them. We have a portfolio of assets that, depending on the needs of each investor, we can bring them in contact with specific asset holders. We inform people about the new development incentives and, of course, the capacity of Greece in terms of production. And we also operate as an advisor to the state, a kind of ombudsman, let's say. Given that we, the Enterprise Greece, have no legislative authority, we try to support the legislative procedure in the Parliament. Mr. Karaindros, Mytilineos Group, energy, right? And not only energy, more than that, it's more than energy, yes. This panel is about investments and the prospective opportunities. So being a big group, not only in the energy industry, what are your goals? What are your prospects for the future? Allow me to reply and bridge that with the previous discussion. We are a company whose core business, or great deal of our business, has to do with energy. So bringing investments in Greece means the world, because it will help us have an increased GDP, because when the GDP grows, then all industries, or whatever we do, energy, steel making, or constructions, all these industries will be benefited. The same applies to all Greek companies. We kicked off with a very ambitious investment plan, and I think this also reflects to our figures. In the past 2 years, we have been able to more than triple our figures, and I do believe that we will be a pleasant surprise for everyone, because they will see that our figures are sustainable and we are moving forward. But as I said before, Many of the things we do them in collaboration with foreign partners. For instance, in the case of the Attiki Odos tender, we have Vinci, which is an international giant next to us. So being able to attract foreign investors in Greece has to do with the kind of investors we want. Do we want investors who will just acquire a company and do some financial engineering? That's not what we actually want, right? What we want is true investments that will help us as well. For instance, I heard the Athens Stock Exchange president talking about tech giants and technology companies and how they may become listed and the benefits to the Athens Exchange. So if we're able to actually attract technology companies and bring our people back and reverse the brain drain, this will allow us to, let's say, find the technological capacity we need for our operations. Steel making, metallurgy, construction needs this technological component in order to move forward. It will transform. Technology transforms the energy sector. Currently, we don't have the necessary manpower in Greece that we require. So if we are able to attract investments, if we have the statutory framework, the financial instruments that are needed, more private equities that should be produced, more reforms that should be passed, this will be to everyone's benefit. In our plans, we try to grow towards this direction in all the industries we operate. Mr. Scopelitis, EY carries out an annual survey on Greece's attractiveness as an investment destination. Could you share with us your latest results? Yes, of course. Indeed, we carry out this survey mentioned before. Some of the figures and some of the insights have been mentioned before when talking about investments. Our survey is focusing on greenfield projects, which means FDIs that truly give some added value to the Greek economy and society. So we do not review all investments, solely this part. And we also measure the perception of foreign investors for Greece. So according to our 2022 survey, we may take out three specific conclusions. There is no doubt whatsoever that the perception of Greece as an investment destination has taken off. That's something corroborated by the figures already, given, of course, the dark days we've been through in the past. Anyway, it's certain. 2021 has been, always according to our own methodology, I'll have to stress that, 2021 has been the second best year after 2020. And 2021 represent 25% of all greenfield project-related investments that took place in our country in the past 25 years when we actually started this survey. We also identified some improvement in the qualitative elements of this survey. I don't know, we don't have much time. I won't delve into that. Year by year, we have an improvement in the perception of vis-à-vis our country by foreigners as an investment destination. So what investors tried to do in the past years, actually their will to further expand their activities and invest more in Greece rose from 28% to 37%. And actually 3/4 of the respondents said that Greece's attractiveness will further improve in the coming 3 years. This is the highest rate ever amongst all countries reviewed in the survey, and of course it goes well beyond the EU average of 64%. So that's the first conclusion, and we have to stick to that. Second conclusion. Now, that's a sobering thought, if I may say. It's not enough to compare ourselves with our bad self of the past. Okay, we're doing fine, we said that, great. But we must never forget that we have to compare ourselves with our competitors. And that's something which is also useful for us to do. So we saw that in some of the other countries where this survey took place, there has been a significant improvement following the period of the pandemic. So we are lagging behind. We have to catch up. We're currently doing so. So in order for us to be satisfied, we have to be, let's say, a couple of steps ahead. So we need this leap forward. Exactly. We have to be at least a couple of steps ahead of our competitors. Third conclusion. From a qualitative point of view, there are three important sectors highlighted by the survey which are extremely important for the future. A, our human resources, our workforce, sustainable growth, and technology. In all these three fields, let's say, we have some qualities, we have some strengths, but given that the overwhelming majority believes that we are close to the European average, or we actually go well beyond that, there are specific sectors in which we have significant minorities that believe that we are lagging behind the EU average, and we have lots of work to do. Let me put a full stop here. Yes, I think we all agree on that. Mr. Karaindros mentioned that before, Mr. Giannopoulos as well. Mr. Giannopoulos, within the enterprise Greece, you have lots of contacts with investors, you have a portfolio of many interesting projects, right? I'm pretty sure that you discuss some of the weaknesses of the Greek system during your discussions. So, what are those weaknesses that currently obstruct your efforts for a more improved investment growth and appetite in Greece? Yes, there are some barriers until we make it. We try to take the investors by the hand in order to complete their investments, and we do that by acting as their advisors. So we let them know about both the investment and financing instruments available, or tax exemptions or whatever else there is. This doesn't mean, of course, that all the needs or the requirements of investors are being met. That's our advisory role, as I said. The first thing we could talk about is how to simplify licensing procedures in state-of-the-art industries or some avant-garde sectors. Okay, we're taking steps forward thanks to the e-gov and the e-governance intervention, so we can reach the point where other European counterparts are. We can also investigate on how we can support investors in times of delays. We try to do that by fixing their appointments between the investor and the competent secretariat, if you like. And for us, it's important to formalize, to institutionalize this strategic investment framework, because when we talk about FDIs, we're talking about projects that went through the fast-track scheme introduced by Enterprise Greece. So if we properly focus on the priorities and goals set by the Greek government, I think we can help from our own standpoint for these investments to be materialized. Mr. Karaindros, the Mytilineos group is actively operating, is very active in the context of the RRF, right? Now, I've seen that many companies, because of the many projects they have in our country, they fail to find the right people in order to recruit for their international projects. Do you have an answer about that? Because you are one of the groups, you represent a group that may be active in other areas, in the Balkans, for instance, in major projects. Yes, I wish it would be only for the projects in the pipeline for the Balkans. Great part of our jobs, of our operations, has to do with international projects. Europe, okay, that's the obvious destination, but our operations cover Latin America all the way to Australia and Africa. And we spend lots of our time about these international projects. As I said before, we need human resources. Okay, that's a huge discussion we might have. It has to do with how we link our universities with the market and the industry, so we can come up with people so that individuals like ourselves, of our age, I met Mr. Scopelitis when we were young back in London, so we can make Greece one of the top choices for someone to find a job, or at least to get people back for the same reason. We have to have the companies or the organizations that may provide people with the right insights and experiences, of course, the right remuneration, in order to come back. This is the only way in order to see many companies that will follow suit. We need infrastructure, we need many, many things. It's not just the human factor that will allow you to operate abroad. It needs you have to be very meticulous. Let me remind you what happened with various construction companies that tried to operate abroad, and for many reasons, not to be discussed right now, they failed. So that's not the point. So allow me, give me just 30 seconds to add something on the issue of domestic investments in Greece. Apart from the tax regime and the fiscal framework and the human resources and attracting the right investments, we also have to talk about the licensing procedures. Yes, some great steps have been taken to the right direction, but many more are needed. Talking about the legislation, the legal framework, because we see many of the investors we're having discussions about potential partnerships. They keep on telling us how fast will a legal dispute be settled if I go to Greek courts? Yes, tomorrow we're going to have a session on that. You will see that. Indeed, after the COVID pandemic, things have been improved, but unless we find a solution with that, we won't be able to see the Greece we all want to. I think this is one of the largest, of the biggest impediments. You're right. Mr. Scopelitis. Greece has been through a long period of deindustrialization. Do you believe that it's high time that our country attracted investments that are industry-specific? I think we are close to 10% of our GDP. Yeah, a bit less. I think there is a bet, right? If we can take, if we can step up by 3 or 4%. Firstly, let me give you a straightforward answer. Yes, there are prospects about that, but under specific preconditions, if you like. The first thing we have to mention in the context of the survey I mentioned before, no less than 20% of these greenfield projects had to do with the Greek industrial landscape. That's quite encouraging. It shows that there's something going on. The second encouraging element of the survey is that despite this trend of deindustrialization, there have been significant efforts that really boomed. Some exemplary industrial projects prospered, very extrovert ones, covering also various fields such as agro-food, underwater cabling, technology, software. Many of these companies currently hold a very important position, maybe a leading position in their field. So these examples show the way forward. And our survey also showed that, given what has happened already, I mean, the energy crisis, the COVID pandemic, etc., 53% of all investors, compared to 23% 1 year before, is currently thinking about repatriating the nearshoring potential, which means bringing their operation closer to their customers. And some 20% are thinking about reshoring. That's an opportunity which, under specific preconditions and with lots of work, we can do. It's good to talk about that, but it takes a lot of hard work to do it. And I think we have to avail ourselves of the strategic location or position of our country. And I think this creates the ideal opportunity, not the last opportunity, because in Greece we've been talking about the last opportunities year after year. But indeed, this is a unique opportunity for our country to build a very targeted and prosperous industrial basis, and while at the same time transforming our country into a regional hub, transit hub. I think there is a list of factors that should apply. We have to avail ourselves of our competitive advantage. We discussed about energy before. EY survey gave us reasons to be smiling because they showed, the survey showed that we are ranking quite high given the difficult circumstances when it comes to renewables. Mr. Karaindros talked about the human resources. That's a very, very important component. We are currently lacking qualified people also in the world of industries. For instance, production engineers. That's a very, very important issue. Companies do tell us about that. And I don't want to stick to the licensing issues, etc. These are things you are already aware of, but there's a lot of work that has to be done. Thank you very much. I think following this discussion, we have just justified why we picked this title for the summit, Big Bets in Challenging Times. There are grounds for being optimistic. There are many things we have to do. It would take an entire conference to discuss about them, but I think we have reasons to be optimistic, and I think that's the conclusion that I took out of this panel. Thank you very much for your contribution. Dear friends, time for a break. A brief one.